you. So oftentimes in these repatriation groups, we hear people say they want to go to Africa and live like the locals. I take issue with that statement because, for one, I don't think people really understand that there's a spectrum of what a local may live like in Ghana, for one. And two, there's also like, are you saying that you need to live like you want to live in a Zongo, or are you saying you want to live like just a middle class local?
Okay. And so the number one thing with that, let me tell you something. There's a lot of people who will tell you, like, I'm long-winded as hell. I'm long-winded because I'm super detailed. Like, you can't say to me, I'm going to Zimbabwe to live like the locals without me being like, well, what do the locals live like?
Right.
How much do they make? What kind of house do they have? How often do they this, that, and a third and whatever else? But there are a lot of people who do that. They go without knowing.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? And on top of that, when you saying live like the locals and you talk about Ghana, what kind of local are you talking about? Because I've been in some of these groups.
What kind of local?
I've been in some of these groups where they're like, oh, I'm in Ghana doing it like the locals. We went down the street to fetch water, to come back to the house to take a bath. We did this, we did. And I'm like, in who house?
In what kind of house?
I've been Ghanaian my entire life. And even when my mom was building this house, we didn't go down the street to fetch water. That doesn't mean I haven't seen it, but that's not our normal. You understand what I'm saying? And my aunt has lived in our house since forever. She would very much be considered local. She's never lived outside. She's never traveled outside the country. And she don't go down the street to fetch nobody's water from nowhere to wash nothing.
Exactly. And that's why I'm always saying, like, okay, when you say you want to live like the locals, what locals are you talking about? Because I don't know any locals who fetch water and cook outside, and I don't know them personally.
And I think that's a and that's a part that I say Ghana is very, 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 very much a class system society. So you have people on different levels of the class system. So when you telling me a local, you need to tell me what level of the class system you're talking about. Because like I said, my aunt would be considered a local. She doesn't fetch water from anywhere. She cooks outside because it might be hot today.
It might be hot, right?
Gas. She don't got enough gas, so she's throwing it on a coal pot. And a coal pot is the equivalent of a grill on the ground. Or she like her soup better in the pot on the coal pot.
Like that.
Yes, not because she decided she's not gonna have a stove in the house because she don't need to.
Exactly.
The other aspect of that, which is slightly insensitive and out of touch, is a lot of these people are doing this because they have to.
Because they have to.
Not because they feel like it makes them an authentic Ghanaian. It's because they want to have water in the house. They want to have a stove in the house. They want to stay in their compound and do whatever it is they need to do. They don't want to go down the street. They don't feel like it makes them any more Ghanaian than the next person. The reality is anybody who's true and honest about who they are understand that is something that is done out of necessity because they don't have. Right. And that speaks to the quality of life in the country, the disparity of quality of life, the government, and how seriously they take the most basic of amenities for the average person. So not having water in your house in America, your house would be condemned.
Right.
Your house would be condemned. Not having constant electricity, not having plumbing and sewage, you would not be allowed by the American government to live in a domicile on that level. But in Ghana, it's lawlessness. Somebody can be building a house and have the frame, no windows, no doorways, no doors, and leave it there, and somebody will squat and move in and live like that, and nobody will come and tell them you can't do that. Exactly. And so for outsiders, they will see that and think this is a standard of living, or this is how these people do things. Something that the overall society looks at and says, yes, this is like ancient African way. We're trying to keep it traditional or anything like that. No, that's simply done because they don't have anywhere else to go. And unfortunately, the housing system is like one of Ghana's biggest problems. And that stems culturally and traditionally from this mindset of your children should live with you until they get married. Mm-hmm. Right? So with that mindset, your kids are living with you, you know, Africans kind of marry a little younger, let's say 20 somethings to 30s, they're usually married. After about 35, you ain't married, they're kind of looking at you sideways.
Right.
They feel a type of way about that. So normally in America, at 18, 20, 21, you move out, you get your own place, you get a job, you can afford to live on your own. So because of that, the American society has made it so that there's housing affordable for people in those low-level jobs. People working at McDonald's can get a place to live and whatever else. In Ghana, you could not be 18, 21 and afford to live on your own with genuinely earned money. So right. If you see a guy who's 25 and he lives in airport residential, the likelihood of him being a scammer or coming from a wealthy family is 99.95%.
Right.
Because it's not conducive. So then that creates a thing where you have all of these, you know, 28, 30-year-olds who can't live on their own. They don't live in good conditions because the whole government system is not created affordable housing. It's not created it to where they can get jobs. It's not created it to where they can do these things. And then the traditional aspect of it is not to push your kids out. But right. Then you also have a society where it can't accommodate its people in a good living standard.
Right, right. So let me ask you this. Would you say that when people, you mentioned that the cultural insensitivity of, you know, of people saying, can you hear me?
Okay, it's unfrozen now. Go ahead.
Okay, so you talk about, you mentioned the cultural insensitivity of people saying, you know, like, I want to live like a local type of situation.
Right.
And what would you, just being a Ghanaian and kind of knowing how Ghanaians are, what would you say that Ghanaians think when we are coming and living like destitute, substandard lives?
Okay, so listen. I'm gonna give you a quick story. One year I came to Ghana for my regular summer vacations. I'm at my house with my cousins and I have on some distressed denim that has like holes in it. It's ripped up, it's frayed, it's whatever. And my cousin is like, "You came from America looking like this?" So that speaks to, they see that and that's exactly how they think. They like, you American and you came to live like, one, they think either you don't have good work ethic. Mm-hmm. You don't have good work ethic, because if it was them and they had the opportunities that they believe America has, they would not come back to Ghana and live this way at all. This is what, one thing I will say is, Ghanaians who move outside and work, they don't play these games. They don't come to America, the majorities, and get a job in a fast food chain and do that for their entire lives. Right. That's not real. They will hustle. They will hustle. And if they hustle and they get to a point where they move back to Ghana, when they move back to Ghana, they moving into a 6-bedroom, 4-car garage, pool in the backyard. They making up for lost time. So when they see an American, a Black American, yellow American, green American, Chinese, whoever, come and you're going to fetch water, they're really looking at you like, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong? Yeah.
What's wrong with you? They feel like either you don't have money, or you have money and you're cheap, mm-hmm. or you were in America and you didn't take your opportunity seriously, which is why most people who, you know, are born in Ghana, when they go to the US, they're hard achieving. They want to become like doctors, lawyers, whatever, because for them, if they came from an impoverished background in Ghana, they never had the thought that they could be a doctor or a lawyer in Ghana. But in America, where they have access to more resources and they feel like their hard work pays off in a way that they can either study more or whatever, or pass it on to their kids, it's more attainable for them there. And then they actually decide to show that wealth through houses and, you know, living lavishly. It's a show of wealth based off of where they came from. You know what I mean? Even with the wealthier people, if you're wealthy and your kid goes to the UK and whatever, and they go to school, they don't expect you to come back and live like someone who's never lived outside. They expect you to live a certain kind of way. They expect you to look a certain kind of way. They expect you to make decisions and be more free than someone who's been limited by the limitations of Ghana.
Yeah. So I think one of my hold on. Mm-hmm. These people just they really don't.
That's how it always is. It always is. You know, when you're not busy, it's quiet. As soon as you got something to do, everybody else got something to do. That's life. That's life in a household with other people.
Yeah. So one of the things that that really I think there's a misunderstanding about is this idea of unity. So like here in America, I always hear people talking about, you know, we need to unite, which is, I can agree with it. Okay. But for some reason we have this idea, or some people have this idea that our brothers and sisters on the continent are so much more united than we are.
Do they really? Because the groups that I'm in with Black Americans, they're always like, and that's why the Africans don't have this, and they can't do that, and they don't even like us. And maybe they think within the group, like Ghanaians to Ghanaians are more close than, and I feel like where you're going is in terms of tribalism. So how people interact within the tribes. So I feel like on the surface, it's like, okay, I'm Fanti. Most other people, not most, but Ashantis are the majority of the population. And then you have, you know, the Gas, the Dagbanis, the Ewes, the Hawuzas, the people who, you know, the Nigerians, they're not Ghanaian, but, you know, they are in Ghana, whatever. So I think on the surface, we interact with one another warmly.
Right.
But just like I feel like in America, at home, it's kind of like, well, you know, those Ashanti people do XYZ.
Exactly.
And you know, the Fanti people do XYZ. But I mean, even within, like, I'm Fanti and I'm from Cape Coast. Cape Coast itself, near what people know Cape Coast for, which is the castle, which isn't all Cape Coast has to offer, but that's where my family is from, the majority. We have some family that are also from Tuckrade. But next to Cape Coast is Elmina. So all of these people, Central Region starts from Kaswa and it goes all the way to Tuckrade. So those people are all considered Fanti. But within Cape Coast, people will tell you, like, the Fantis from Elmina will tell you they're more hardworking than the Fantis from Cape Coast. And so you will tell, so people will say, like, oh, they're Fanti, and then somebody will say, oh, you from Cape Coast? And I'll be like, oh, no, I'm from Elmina. Because the ones in Cape Coast, they lazy. Like, that's how they are. That's how they are. Yeah. I don't take it as personally, because I've asked people, like, even within Cape Coast, I've been like, I've asked men, I'm like, excuse me, they said that the Fanti men in Cape Coast are lazy. Is it true? And they be like, it's true. And they talking about themselves. I'm like, so you are lazy. He's like, well, you know.
Hey, you know.
But the funny thing is, like, at one point I was, from my own YouTube, I was interviewing, like, older people who live in Cape Coast, my uncle, family, different people, and asking them different things. And one person said that when the white people came to Ghana for the purposes of the slave trade, they set up the forts in Cape Coast. And what they did was they protected the Fanti people from being captured and snatched in Cape Coast. But they also, so they would trade textiles and goods to the Ashanti Kingdom. And they used that to build Kumasi, and they would leave alcohol and booze in Cape Coast. So the Cape Coast people are like, hey, it's good time. Relax. They like, we don't got no worries over here.
Yeah, we chilling. Yeah.
Who has the club? Who has the star? Let's go have a drink. Yeah. And as a result of it, you look at Cape Coast, and Cape Coast is underdeveloped. It's very underdeveloped. There's not a sense of community there that is pushing for the advancement and the growth of Cape Coast. So when I heard that, I was kind of like, sounds like that could be very true. That sounds like it could be very true because,
Yeah.
you know, the Fanti people, the men are very, very lax, a lot of them. And the ones who are not lax, they typically pick up and leave Cape Coast and go to Accra or Kumasi and get the education and build and do different things. And they come back home to visit, but they don't stay within the community to build the community. So I feel like amongst the groups, they definitely say different things. You know, they say Ashantis are like flashy and money, 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 whatever, you know, which the history of slavery, the history of slavery is the Ashantis were fighting within the kingdom for domination. And that's why they started capturing other people and selling them off because they wanted money. And, you know, so it's kind of like, I could believe that one too. So,
yeah. You
right.
know, with you saying that, you know, it brings me to the thought that, you know, a lot of African Americans or Black Americans, whatever we want to categorize ourselves as, I think they're surprised when Ghanaians, a lot of Ghanaians don't really know our history. Like maybe they should know that our history. And I think a lot of us don't even know we only know the history that we're taught here, which is very watered down, very to me it paints a really not so clean, or it paints a clean picture.
When it's revised. It's very
exactly,
much, yes.
When the picture is very staggered and there's so many different narratives. And like I have one friend who his mother is Elway, his father is Fanti, Gan. Yeah, the mother is Elway, the father is Gan. The mother's family got rich off of the slave trade, and the father's family was sold into slavery.
Yeah.
And somehow they ended up back in Ghana after, they were sold to Brazil, and they were sent to Brazil, and some kind of way they ended up back in.
So at one point, because one of the people I interviewed, he used to work, I don't want to say the Navy, but he used to work on ships that transited from Ghana to Brazil. And there were a lot of Ghanaians during that time who went back and forth that way. So it's possible that the ships went there for trade and were docked there, and they came back knowing where they were from during that time. So my thing was, when I started kind of doing my little bit of research, because my bachelor's is actually in history, I wanted to learn what Ghanaians had learned about slavery. So I talked to different people of different age groups to kind of see what that was. And then I went to the University of Legon library to look at what books they had available for people to learn. And unfortunately, the books they had there were all written by white people. They were fairly modern. And so I think Ghanaians also, if they get any kind of slave education currently, it's also a watered down version of how things were. There's a lot of details that are kind of left out. And I think in part, it speaks to why Ghanaians are welcoming and accepting of white people coming into Africa, coming into Ghana to do business. A lot of them don't fully understand the details. They understand it on the surface. And so I do hear in some groups like Black Americans, African Americans saying like, well, y'all don't even know y'all history and this, that, and the third. And they're partially right, but neither do you guys on that level. Because listen, this is one of the things that really, really gets me with people, because I've seen that a lot with African Americans and Africans arguing, and they're like, my ancestor and this, and my ancestor and my this and my story. And I'm like, do you understand that you guys are telling the same story?
The same story.
Do you understand that your ancestor is that person's ancestor? So you trying to fight them. You trying to fight your sister about the slave trade like her mama wasn't taken. Like, I'm not understanding what you're saying. Well, and I feel like there's an aspect of it now currently, because tensions are high, where they want to blame or they want answers from modern day Africans about what was done hundreds of years ago.
Okay.
And it's like, that's not realistic. Not because there's not a level of responsibility, but because just like you don't know the details, they don't know the details.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think one of the things is it's 100% a fact that Africans were involved in the slave trade.
Right.
But the aspect of it that people need to understand is it wasn't a majority. Exactly. So when the Chinese come in 2020 to build a road in Accra, the 30 million people on the continent do not know what the details of the contract are. So they see them and they say, okay, the government let them come. Whatever they come to do here must be legit and keep it moving. They don't fully understand that that deal that they orchestrated is a dirty deal and it has a negative aspect on their neighbor's business or their business or what they should be able to do. They don't understand that. So then when you're looking to hold a general person accountable for something they don't understand, it's like it doesn't work like that because there are so many more details to the scenario. While there were Africans who willingly snatched and assisted in the snatching and selling of Africans into the slave trade, there was a lot of people who didn't know. And there were a lot of people who, when they found out, they fought, they died, they set up traps, they weren't for it. And that's why when I see and I say this all the time, when I see shows like Underground and anything that shows fight, resistance, and whatever, I'm like, if you're a real Black person, you know that it is not genetically in us to see our brother or sister being hurt, even if you don't like them, and not have a reaction. There are some of us, the minority of us, who are willing to be involved in these things for the betterment of ourselves as individuals. But to think that the majority knew what was going on and they didn't care is absurd. Right. Because, when people found out about it, that's when you saw the real resistance. Because like I said, when I started doing the research, they were like, oh, they found out. So some of them were running and some of them were being killed. They made it to Cape Coast and they told them, look, the Ashantis are coming. They're capturing people. They started setting traps. They started fighting from Cape Coast back to the Ashanti kingdom. They fighting all along the way. They killing, they dying on the road. Their family don't know where they are. There were instances where in the beginning they were being told, go with these white people. They're going to take you to their country. You're going to work in and you can send money.
You're going to come back.
Exactly. They're still doing that in 2020.
Today. Exactly.
They're still doing that in 2020. And this is why I say the poverty is what allowed us to be in a situation. It wasn't just the greed. It's this situation where you got elders who have gold, who have all the land, who have all of this, and they're not dispersing that wealth amongst their community that makes them susceptible to trust anybody who looks different than them. And that's why we're, even here in America, that's why we're still, in this kind of situation.
And see, that's the part that really kind of, I tell people, you really need to, it's really important that we bridge this gap between us so that when I'm talking to you, a Ghanaian who knows the history on that side and who knows the history on this side, you're like an anomaly. Both sides of this, and it's really important that we have the conversation so that, because these people, I think the best thing that white people have ever been able to do is to keep us from actually dealing with each other.
And I think part of them keeping us from getting to know each other is giving us scraps.
Exactly.
And I don't even mean scraps of details of what happened. I mean scraps of life. So people get too comfortable. People get too comfortable. And this is one of the things I say that really, really gets me with Ghana is there's so much money to be made in Ghana.
God, yes.
Clean money. Yes. Clean money, scam-free money. But what they do is they reward certain people for doing dirty deeds, and then people see the product of those rewards and they want to go that route. They don't want to go the honest route.
So let me ask you this: as a Ghanaian, bridging this gap with a Black American or African American, I really don't like either one of those terms. I don't know how to classify this thing, but
I just say Black. I don't really like the term African American for myself, but I say Black because I feel like it connects me to everybody that looks like me, no matter where you come from.
It's hard. That has been a struggle for me for a while. But as a Black,
right?
Being Black and you're from Ghana, your history in Ghana. Our history here in America. What do you think it is we need to do to kind of close that?
Okay, so there's a fine space between searching for the education and that resurging hurt and pain that you don't have the skills to cope with, that will allow you to function in that society where you don't feel angered. Mm-hmm. And then there is the space where, you know, you've heard, like, I think it was Akon recently, he said, oh, Black Americans need to just forget about slavery and whatever else. And as much as I hate Akon, excuse me, that was the wrong word, but as much as I dislike Akon, I really do, for like 50 reasons. As much as I dislike him, I think I understood what he was trying to say. Because if you hold on to the pain, you're never going to be able to go forward.
Right.
And so trying to say. I think that's what he was trying to say. You're never going to be able to go forward. And in a space like today, where African countries are welcoming of Black Americans who have no traceable ties to the country and allowing you to buy land and build and whatever, he's trying to tell you guys to take advantage of that opportunity.
Right.
Take advantage of that opportunity. But the reality is, you have to experience the different countries to see where you feel the most comfortable. Because I can't tell you to come to Ghana and you get there and it doesn't speak to your spirit. And then I'm talking to you about opportunities and what you can do and how much money you can make, but you're not comfortable, you don't relate, or you're angered by, you know, slave castles and forts, or seeing the whites and the Blacks interact and seeing them have space and seeing them build wealth, and you can't get past it. Every African continent country may not necessarily be for you. There has to be a certain level of exploration, and it has to be a certain level of soul searching to where you have to really look at yourself and see, like, this is what I can do and how I can move going forward. Because, you know, for me, growing up in the US, it's funny because I think when I was younger, it's like my memories of these are kind of vague, where I had Black friends or Black people I went to school with that kind of tried to bully me, like, oh, you're African and whatever. But it didn't take for me. You know, like when somebody tries you, but you're just like, I'm not accepting of this bullshit.
Right.
And so it doesn't affect me. So for me, I have Black friends in America that I've had since I was a kid. And that's like my sister. You know what I'm saying? Like, now she live in a country and I'm like, that's still my sister because we've been through it together. And you have to be able to form bonds with people like that to where you feel safe, to where you feel you can trust them, to where you feel you can really relate information and build, or you're always going to be searching. And I think sometimes this gene trace has a negative impact on people.
I do too. I've decided that I'm not doing that.
Let me tell you, I was like, I want to try one, because if I come back and you tell me I got 2% of white in me, I know you lying, nigga.
I would now that would be interesting. I would love
but you know, I would be very upset, but I don't trust them. And they just sold the database. So I'm like, I'm good. But and we knew that was coming.
Exactly.
I don't trust them. But I said that to my sister. Like, I say that to my sister. She also has a history degree. And I'm just like, you should get a gene trace. And she's like, what? I would never. Like, she be so
to debunk they bullshit. Like,
but you know what? The problem with that is I've had from Black people reject the idea that I could be 100% Black.
Really?
You don't know where you come from? Yes, I do. I'm 100, but you don't know. There was white people in Africa during the, and so if you know anything about Africans, if you know anything about Ghanaians, they love to tell their family story. If there was a mama who dated a white man in 1202,
you would know.
Picture with
you would know.
You would know. They would tell you the origin of the name. Like, that's the thing about my family. I can tell you when my mother's family name was changed to a white version to make it more pronounceable, what side it was, who did what, when they did it. And that's what I say sometimes to Black Americans who are like, they don't know their family. I said, sometimes y'all don't know your family because you don't want to sit down with your family.
Right.
Sit down and talk to your family before it's too late and find out the pieces of what they know that you can match with other people and make yourself feel whole. You know what I'm saying? Because these people know a lot. These people know a lot. Like, I was young when my grandmother died, but for the first 2 years of my life, I was back and forth to Ghana. So I saw her all the time. She didn't even really speak English well. But I felt like I had that connection to her, and I could say emphatically that my older siblings were able to have conversations with her and discuss things that I was not. But at the same time, I have her child, my mother, and her other children who are here that are able to tell me certain things. We have family houses, we have extended family. You know, here in Ghana, they're big on traditional, cultural, and all of these things. You can go to these people and they be like, oh, your mother was who? Oh, so her sister is this one, and they lived in this house, and they ran over there, and they did that, and their uncle was from there. And one time, you know what I'm saying?
And we do the same thing here. Like,
exactly,
talk to the old people.
Exactly, and you're able to bring it back. You're able to bring it back, and in my culture, we keep a written book record. So I participate in a reasonable amount of traditional activities because when I was younger here in the States, my mom immersed me in the Ghanaian culture within the States. So we had a group here called the Akan Association. So that encompassed the Ashanti groups, the Fanti groups, and a couple of the other groups. And we would meet, I don't know if it was monthly or every couple of weeks, and they would teach us traditional things to make sure we pass them down. We would interact with one another. So now, in my city, if I go out and I see somebody, 9 times out of 10, I met them at an Akan Association meeting when I was 7. Right, you know what I'm saying? And then certain things are passed down. But in my culture in Ghana, we have a book where they write down your ancestor, who their kids were, what the kids' names was, what lineage they're on, whatever. And they kind of keep track. So you're able to go to them and see, okay, I know my grandmother, I know my great-grandmother, but who was before her and what were their kids' names and whatever else. And then usually last names still trace to certain sectors of the city. They trace to certain family homes, they trace to certain things. So if you wanted to sit down and search, you could probably go back a good 400 or 500 years. It might stop somewhere around there, but you can get a reasonable amount of information. And for me, I think because I was so bicontinental from young, like when I'm in my city and I walk the streets, there are so many people who know me from when I was a kid. It's like, oh, you back? When did you leave? We ain't seen you in a while. We missed your face, this, that, you know what I mean? And it makes you feel more at home. And I know that people who are not Ghanaian don't necessarily get that, but when you're here for long enough, it builds the same way. Right. It really does.
And to your point, I hear a lot of African Americans saying that, you know, we need to leave this American stuff behind and y'all need to leave. And I kind of take issue with it because
like when they're going to live in African countries,
when you're going to live in Ghana or an African country, I kind of take issue with it because at the end of the day, for the last 400 years, this is where my family has been. I see Black Americans as we have a good mixture of the two. We didn't leave everything in Africa, and I don't think, for the most part, we haven't collected everything American. I think we have our own culture, and I think it's important that we.
I don't think that's what they mean when they say that. Okay, so for me,
from what I've experienced, because a lot of people say we don't know our culture, we don't know.
No, not that aspect. The aspect of leaving things behind. I don't think it's the cultural aspect that they're talking about. I think it's the attitude. And I don't think it's limited to Black Americans. I think it's Americans in general. Americans in general are very entitled. They're very, the world revolves around them. They expect things to work the way that they had them in America. They expect people to answer to them the way that they're used to in America. And that doesn't work when you're coming over to Africa.
No. I totally agree with that. But I think maybe I need to put it in a different wording. What I'm like, a lot of times I think people believe that we're gonna
come in and absorb the culture and absorb the culture completely. Exactly. That's nonsense, because
it's not even reasonable to think that you're going to assimilate into this culture.
It's not. And on top of it, I feel like if you're ever presented that option by a Ghanaian, what you need to say to them is, but when you people move to America, you still speak your language, you still eat your food, and you still carry your traditions. It's not reasonable, it's not fair, and it's not even decent to expect. And I've never experienced that. I've never heard anybody say that. Maybe because what I have heard is the attitudes, like when there's an issue and you want something done a certain way, it's always, this is not America, you're not in America, you're not whatever, which is also limiting to Ghanaians, because I say to people, I'm like, but the funny thing is, you would kill yourself, you would sell your kidney, you would sell your heart for an opportunity to go and live in America. So why not build your country to function as efficiently and as well rounded as America and stay home? That's always my argument with them. So I've never heard it in terms of like tradition.